Would I normally get the icon pass? Sure. But with all that Gertrude's got going on, planning her wedding and whatnot, there's just no time. Do I regret not getting the icon pass?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you do. You're cooped up here, losing your mind.
That's not true.
Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar where we'll be exploring how you can better use your customer data to improve your Facebook advertising. My name's David Chin. I'm the president of Lexa, and for those that are unfamiliar with Lexa, we're a technology and a services firm that helps outdoor brands and retailers to use their customer data to genuinely understand and engage their customers, but ultimately to drive profitable growth through that improved interaction. One of the things that we're seeing from leading brands here in the US is they've adopted a way of managing their customer data that enables them to derive genuine insight into their customers with a complete understanding of all of their interactions that they have with each customer. They then use that customer data to build a single view that they then are able to generate meaningful insights into their customers' behaviors, preferences, and interests, and then use that data to effectively communicate with those customers across all channels. Now, today we're very focused on the channel of social. Our agenda for today, we're going to start with some fundamentals on Facebook. We've got a pretty broad audience today, so there are large, well-known brands, we have small kind of retailers, and we've got omni-channel brands and retailers. So I'm going to start with a grounding in some fundamentals about Facebook. Then we'll move on to the methods that you can use to find your high-value customer segments, and then some practical examples of how you can use those high-value customer segments to improve the generation of your lookalike audiences to acquire not only more customers, but better customers. And then we'll look at practical tips around how you can target your existing customers to grow customer lifetime value. So starting with the Facebook fundamentals, when we say Facebook, what do we really mean? We're not meaning just Facebook. We're actually referring to Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and the Facebook audience network. And so, collectively, the entire Facebook business, commands more than 22% of paid media spend here in the US for a staggering $37.5 billion. Now, when it comes to the role that Facebook plays in the world of e-commerce, it's incredibly important. And whilst this data point here is a little bit dated, as of Q1 2019, Facebook and Instagram collectively drove more than 90% of the traffic to e-commerce sites that came from social. Now, there have been a few, Snap's grown over the last 2 years, but overwhelmingly more than 2/3 of e-commerce traffic from social is coming from Facebook. Now, when we look at Facebook here in the US and we plot out daily active users, if you look at the bottom of those bars, that's the US and Canada population. Daily active viewers has not grown. And so the audience on Facebook has been large, it continues to be large, the market share is very strong. So we're not seeing a big increase in users on the Facebook platform. But when we look at the revenue, we can see that the revenue over the same period has steadily grown. And so if we have the same sized audience, but Facebook are generating more revenue from the same sized audience, it speaks to the fact that the competition from advertisers to reach that audience is higher. And when we look at the average revenue per user on Facebook, you can see that from Q1 2017, it was at $4, through to Q3 of 2020, where they're achieving nearly $8. So the revenue per user on the platform has increased significantly, which really speaks to the challenge that advertisers are having with Facebook and the cost to reach a user due to that increased competition. Before we can go too much further, I think it's really important for us just to take a pause and just explore the Facebook auction and how, as an advertiser, you are able to purchase an ad to reach a user on the Facebook platform. And so the Facebook auction, it's a combination of these three variables. First, as an advertiser, you make a bid. And so you are essentially proposing to pay an amount to serve your ad to an individual within an audience. Now, Facebook has a very flexible range of bidding types, and so ultimately to meet your campaign objectives, but you're placing a bid to serve an ad to a user. Now, you can tell Facebook that you have a fixed budget and that they can make a decision on the best bid to reach your audience, or you can manually control the bid and set a bid cap for how much you're willing to spend to successfully serve that ad to a user within the audience. Then Facebook looks at your advertisement and your account's history, and it calculates an estimated action rate, which is the likelihood that an individual who is served your ad will take the desired action on your ad. And Facebook here prioritizes ads that have a higher estimated action rate. And so an example of that, if you were a hotel chain, for example, and you were serving an ad that was designed to get someone to make a booking, for the ads that are more likely to convert to a booking, Facebook will prioritize those ads. And then the final element is relevance and quality. So after your ad has served 500 impressions, Facebook will then measure the audience's response to your ad. And if that ad is positive, so likes, shares, comments, engagement, your ad will get a higher relevancy score. If your ad is met adversely by your audience, blocked, they don't share or don't engage with your ad, you get a lower relevancy score. And that relevancy score is designed to kind of control user experience on the platform. So Facebook will prioritize ads that have a better relevancy score. Now, the reason that using your customer data is so important when it comes to your Facebook advertising is that the action rate and relevance score of your advertisements are directly influenced by the targeting and your offer. And so the better your targeting is, the better your offer is, the better your estimated action rate will be, the higher your relevancy score, which means that not only will you get greater placement of your ads, but you'll also get a lower cost per placement, which ultimately relates to cheaper ads and a better return on ad spend. Now, at Lexa, we love Facebook advertising ultimately because it works. And the reason that it works, they have a fantastic customer audience API. So it makes it very, very easy to not only send an audience of your customers to Facebook quickly, but to run updates to that audience on the fly. It's a very, very flexible and easy API to use. The audience is huge, and so the match rate of your customer list to Facebook is usually very high. Typically we see match rates from anywhere from 70 to 95%. Their lookalike audience functionality is second to none. If you just think about the number of data signals that Facebook has into its audience, virtually every e-commerce site in the country has the Facebook pixel on it. So they're not only seeing your behavior on their platform, but the behavior that individuals take off platform on different e-commerce sites. So their ability to build lookalike audiences that are skewed towards conversion is very, very high. I kind of mentioned this before, but they offer very flexible bidding strategies. So no matter what your campaign objectives are, from awareness, consideration, intent to conversion, they have a different kind of bidding strategy for you that you can use to maximize your kind of core objectives. It's a very easy platform to test within. So you can run dynamic tests. They've done a great job of supporting different optimization strategies within the platform. And look, and the final thing that we love about it, it's accessible to companies of all sizes. So you can be a small brand just getting started in paid advertising, spending a couple of $100 or $1,000 a week, all the way through to brands spending millions of dollars. So it's a very accessible platform to companies of different scale. In this next section, we're going to talk about how you find your high-value customer segments. So there's two approaches here, and just to be clear at the outset, not one of these is right or wrong. It's just two different ways of considering finding your segments and running your marketing business. So the first is product first. And so you start with your product, and then the question that you're really asking is, who is the best segment of my customers to serve this product or offer to? Now, the other way is customer first, and Here, you're starting with a segment of customers that you need to engage, and you're considering what is the best message, product, or offer to engage that segment of customers. Recognizing that these are two different approaches is a really good starting point when considering, how to use your data. Do I have a product that I need to sell, or do I have a group of customers that I need to influence their behavior is really the kind of logical starting point for finding your best audiences. Now, I would say just at the start here, any work around your customer data and finding your best customer segments, it's really important that you have a complete profile for each customer. And so this is a screenshot out of our customer data platform of a customer record. And you can see here it's very comprehensive. Now, this is just a thin slice of what we'd have for an individual customer, but it needs to include the individual's behavior in your stores, on your website, how they behave on your site when they are not making a purchase, how they integrate with your email program, what products they've purchased, how much they've spent with you. The more complete the profile you have for each customer, the greater the opportunities are for you to do better segmentation insight and then ultimately improve your advertising performance. So when it comes to finding your high-value segments, it's a combination of two tasks. One is robust customer segmentation, and the second is then testing those segments in the channel to determine whether those segments are performant or not. And so today I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to you about, what are the segmentation strategies to generate those insights, and then, how can you go about testing those segments to determine whether communicating with them with the right offer or ad is going to be performant for you. So on the segmentation side, we advocate for following this crawl, walk, run maturity curve when it comes to starting to segment your customers and gain insights into your different customer segments. On the crawl side, the first place that we recommend you start with is around customer lifetime value. And so if you total up all of the orders that a customer has made with your business across all channels and aggregate that down into a single metric of total spend, how much have they spent with us, that's a really, really good starting point. Now, when we talk about customer lifetime value, immediately people will be thinking, is it historical spend? Is it a prediction of their future spend? Or is it a combination of both? In this instance, in crawl, if you just look backwards at how much each customer has spent with you through their lifetime, it's a really good starting point. The reason we advocate for starting here is if you look at the chart here on the right of screen, this is real data from one of our customers. The top 20% of your customers will make up a disproportionately large amount of your total spend. And so for this brand, their top 20% of customers, you can see on average they're worth $2,481 each, and make up a total of 91% of their total sales. So this very small group of customers is really where they make the lion's share of their revenue and profit. Wherever you have that distribution, and this is an extreme at 2091, but it's very common for direct-to-consumer brands to be 20-60, 20% of your customers will make up 60 or 70% of your total sales. Now, wherever you have this skewed distribution, you really have to understand who these high-value customers are, and not only consider how you engage them to continue to drive and retain them and drive future revenue from them, but then use that to inform how you find new high-value customers. Once you've got your head around customer lifetime value, well, then it's time to focus on demographics. Gender is a really good starting point. Age is a good starting point. Location is meaningful. And so, progress from lifetime value into demographics. From there, as you kind of get out of crawling into walking, we then recommend you focus on order-based metrics. So think about things like recency and frequency of order. You can then also step into the products that customers have bought from you. One of the reasons we love outdoor brands, and it's our biggest segment by customers by volume, is that the products that you sell are largely functional. And understanding the function behind the product that the customer is buying unlocks a huge amount of personalization of messaging. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to focus on products. You can look at channel, so where are we acquiring them, what channel do they prefer to engage with, and then you should be looking at your email program and your customers' engagement and addressability by email. And then as you get more sophisticated, You need to be looking at order sequencing. So what are my customers buying from me first? What are they buying second? What have they bought from me last? You need to be understanding, how long does it take when someone buys product A to come back and purchase again, and what product are they buying in their second order? You can start to lean into personas. You can look at external enrichment from other providers to kind of fill the gaps in your understanding, the things that you don't know from your direct interaction with each customer. That could be things like household income, could be lifestyle factors, presence of children. You can then also step into predictive analytics, so start looking at analytical recommendations of the actions and products that each customer is likely to take with you next. And then I'd recommend starting to get into your website behavior. So, what are known customers doing on your website? What products are they interacting with that they don't convert on? What products are they interacting with that they do convert on? And starting to answer some of those questions. So that then takes us into testing. I caught this meme the other day and it really struck an accord with me, which is, once you've got your great segments defined, well, then it's all about testing, what is the right engagement for those segments. And so when it comes to testing within Facebook, we see 3 macro areas that you should focus on for testing, and it relates to how Facebook constructs a campaign. So at the top level, you have your campaigns, and this is where your bidding strategy or your advertising objective is based. So what are you trying to do? Are you trying to drive conversions and sales? Are you trying to drive link clicks or traffic to your site? Are you trying to drive impressions, so awareness of your brand? This is an area where we'd advocate for some testing. As an example, looking at your sweepstake campaigns, for example, determining whether you want link clicks or landing page views, 2 different bidding strategies on the same objective. We'd recommend going for landing page views to avoid the errant clickers, but you can test at the campaign level. The next level down is the ad set level, and it's in the ad set level that you're able to control the schedule of your ads, so when they run. It's where you control the audience segment that you're targeting. And so for here, we'd advocate that you just focus on audiences to start with. This is where you can load up a whole different set of ad sets, each targeting a different audience group underneath the same campaign objective. And then underneath each ad set is an ad, and that controls the creative and the placement. So are we doing Facebook, Instagram? Is it stories, or is it the news feed? Is it the Facebook audience network? So not only can you control the creative you're using, are we going to be using video, or is it an image? Is it a carousel? But then you can control where you place the ad. And so there's a huge amount of control that you have around creative at that level. So for those that are thinking, I would start with your ad sets and ads as a really good area, and then you can play around with your campaign, different bidding objectives. Now, don't bite off more than you can chew in the beginning. So I think that maturity curve applies here as well. So start small with your testing, bank some learnings, and then kind of move from there. But one thing that's really important is every campaign that you run is an opportunity for you to test a hypothesis, test a theory that you have, a hunch. And you can really use Facebook like a market research program where you have a hypothesis around what audience or message you think is going to resonate the most with your customers. You can do a test around the message or the audience, and then you get a result, in days around which message or which audience performs the best. Now, the key is that you bank that learning, incorporate that learning into your next campaign, but then test a new hypothesis. And if you have that approach to always test, learn, and optimize, test, learn, and optimize, in 6 months and a year, you'll be amazed at the performance increase that you'll get. So we've now covered the kind of Facebook fundamentals, some of the approaches that you can then take to audience segmentation and testing. Now let's get into some practical examples of where you can apply those theories to the role of customer acquisition. And so this section is focused really on how you build better lookalike audiences when you're acquiring new customers. So some simple tips to get you started. Always build your lookalike audiences around your high-value customer segment. And so, you might have to make some decisions here based on the size of your company. You can still build a very good lookalike audience in Facebook with only a few thousand people in an audience. We'd like to see kind of 5,000 or more, but you can still, we've run great campaigns for our customers with small lookalike audiences of 2,500 matched records to Facebook. But make sure you're starting with that high value group, and that might be that top 20% of your customers that make up 70% of your sales. Once you've built your lookalike audience, make sure that you suppress your customer list out of the audience. Because one of the things that Facebook will do is they will find your existing customers and put them in that lookalike audience because they do look like the segment that you're driving. And so if your goal is new customer acquisition, make sure you're suppressing out your whole customer file from your acquisition lookalike audiences. Now, for the retail brands here that their stores serve, a constrained geographic area, once you've built your lookalike audiences, you can apply geo-targeting over the top of that. So you can apply, states, cities, zip codes to constrain the lookalike audience to just those individuals that reside within the catchment area of your stores, for example. And then the fourth tip here is, if you're getting started with lookalike audiences, don't be afraid to test a few different sized segments. So you can build a 1% lookalike, a 1 to 2% lookalike, a 2 to 5% lookalike, and target those 3 different sized audiences, and then measure where the drop-off in your acquisition performance lies. Because you might be surprised. Your total addressable audience might be bigger than you think. And if that's the case, having a really big audience to go after is great because the bigger the audience, the easier it is for you to meet that audience and win the bid to serve your ad to them. So have a think about testing different sized lookalike audiences. For those that have never built a lookalike audience in Facebook, if you go into the audiences section, click to your audience, in the top right corner there's an action button. When you click the action button, one of the options is build a lookalike. When you click the lookalike button, this is what's presented to you. It is incredibly simple. So it'll have the name of your audience. It'll ask you for the geographic region that you want to build your lookalike audiences around. So here I've picked United States. And then it'll ask you to select the size of the lookalike audience that you want to build. And you can see here that in the US, a 1% lookalike audience is just more than 2.4 million people. But here, if you wanted to do that audience testing that I just spoke about, in the number of lookalike audiences in the drop-down section there, you could select 2, 3, or 4 and build different sizes, and the platform will create those lookalikes for you. And it's staggering how fast those lookalikes are created and available for targeting within the Facebook ads platform. Okay, when it comes to your segmentation strategy for these lookalike audiences, as I mentioned before, irrespective of whether you're crawling, walking, or running, you need to have those audiences focused around high-value customers. In the crawl section, the one addition that you can make is gender. And so if you are currently selling men's and women's categoried products, we would really encourage you to build a high-value men audience, a high-value women audience, and build your lookalikes around gender as well. Now, the reason that becomes effective for you is I just consider my wife and I, my wife and I have very different interests when we're on the Facebook platform, very different sites that we buy products from. Trying to build a lookalike audience off our different interests, even though we live in the same household, we have the same kind of income, affluence, a lot of similar factors, our interests are very different. And so it makes it more challenging for the lookalike audience the more distributed or more varied your seed audience is for the lookalike. So if you add gender to it, it makes it a lot easier for Facebook to find your core high-value male audience and your core high-value female audience. Now, if you can't append gender to your file, you can build a single lookalike audience of high-value customers and then apply gender into the ad sets in the audience after you've created it. But again, you are making it harder for Facebook to find your best kind of lookalike. In the walk category, we've seen great success with taking high-value customers who have bought a certain functional category of product and then building a lookalike and targeting them with that product. And I've got an example of that for you. And then in the run side, one of the things that we've seen be very successful is to look at the categories of products that customers buy first and understanding if those customers, when they buy that product first, going to be high-value customers and using that information to focus your acquisition strategy. So to give you an example of some practical results, In the walk, I spoke about building an audience of customers around previous purchases. Now, in our work with Black Diamond, we came to a point where there was an opportunity to test an acquisition audience from a third-party data provider. And so we advocated that they test a combination of that audience provided by the very well-known third-party audience company and a lookalike audience of customers that had purchased, high-value customers that had purchased packs. And so in this test, we ran the same creative against the two different audiences in two different ad sets, and we measured, the performance of the campaign. And the results were pretty staggering. The third-party audiences generated a cost per acquisition of $75. The high-value lookalike audiences, the people that had bought packs, generated a $38 cost per acquisition. So very big variance in CPA, and that variance in CPA also correlated with 135% increase in return on ad spend for the high-value audiences with product purchasing information included. So I find it really hard to believe that a third-party audience provider can beat the current lookalike audience capability in Facebook when you're smart around how you provide data to Facebook to inform the lookalike. Now, in the run category, we have a methodology that we work with our customers on that it's more of the customer-first thinking rather than the product first. So the previous example was product first. We've got packs to sell. Find me the best audience to sell my packs to. In this strategy, it starts with customer first, and it thinks, what are the best customer segments and what are the best products to offer those segments to acquire high-value customers? And so one of the things that we do is we do an analysis of the products that customers buy first, and we look at what volume of customers buy each product first, and then we look at what is the lifetime value of those customers if they buy that product first. And this analysis uncovers your hero products. So they are products that lots of customers like to buy them from you first, and when they buy that product first, they go on to be high value. It exposes your fool's gold category, which is you might have some products that customers love to buy from you first, but the customers that buy that product first don't go on to repeat purchase and don't go on to have a great lifetime value. And so, your acquisition performance can look great if you focus on those categories, but your ultimate customer lifetime value will suffer as a result. And then you will have some categories, some niche products. Typically, they're higher average order value products on the fringe of your range, but customers who buy them first, not many people buy them first, but they go on to be very high value customers. And then you'll have some products that you need to avoid at all cost. So the analysis looks like this, and for this brand, it's a men's apparel brand, we could really clearly see that customers who bought knits and casual jackets first, it's the highest volume, two categories, but equally when customers buy those products, they went on to have an above average lifetime value. And so we would recommend that this brand focuses on acquiring new customers on knits and casual jackets. Equally, there's another few categories here. So if you look at sneakers, graphic t-shirts, and fragrance, we can see that customers that buy in those categories first have a significantly lower customer lifetime value. And then in the case of graphic t-shirts and fragrance, not many customers are coming to them first to buy those products, and they have a lower lifetime value. Now, we would recommend really avoiding winning new customers on these categories because they won't be good customers for the long term. So we've discussed how you use your customer data to build better lookalike audiences. Now we're going to shift gears and focus on how you can engage your existing customers to grow their customer lifetime value. So our simple tips here when it comes to targeting your existing customers, really focus on testing of audience and creative to focus on relevancy of message and offer. So this is about how you maximize your efficiency in the auction to win the not only the placement of the ad, but how you improve the underlying performance of your advertising. One of the pieces of kind of concern that we have from a lot of our customers in the beginning is this focus on granular targeting and the compromise of reach. So the more targeted we are when we communicate with a subset of your customer base, typically the smaller the audience is and the lower the reach is. Whilst you see an improvement in performance for the campaign, you're speaking to a smaller group, so the potential total campaign performance is limited by reach. Now, one thing that we advocate here, if you're concerned about the impact of kind of reach reduction, one of the things that you can do is you can still target a very granular segment of your customers, but create another ad set for all of your other customers that are not in that segment and target them as well. At least that way you get the benefits of reach, but you also get the benefits of learning whether your hypotheses around the best audience for that product or offer is actually going to outperform the other customers. So you can do granular targeting, but it doesn't have to compromise the reach of your advertising. The third tip is make sure you're considering kind of channel addressability when speaking to your customers. One of the things that we see too often is, you might have, more than half of your customers have opted out of your email program or haven't opened an email for 6 months. And so these are great customers to feed into Facebook for targeting to make them addressable in a paid channel because your owned channels, your emails, are not reaching them. The next category here of kind of tip is, for some customers that don't have great email address data for their customers, they might have phone numbers, for example, or names and addresses. Facebook have a different match key for custom audiences that they call their multi-match audiences, where you can send them names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. Facebook will match across all of those fields, and it can be a really good strategy to improve the match rate of your custom audiences. And then the fifth and final tip here is don't be over-reliant on pixel-based audiences. Often we see brands that do all of their audience targeting via the Facebook pixel, not using segments of their customers that they've defined outside of Facebook, and it can cause some issues that I'll kind of get to in a moment. So when it comes to segmentation for your existing customers, here there's a lot of stuff you can do in the crawl area around customer value and demographics. So you can focus there. It's a really good place to start. As you get into the walk, we recommend recency frequency and monetary value-based segmentation. Look at email addressability and then look at products. And again, there's a lot you can do there in that walk category with those 3 areas of segmentation. And then when you get into run, focus on time and interval. Try to kind of get to your core customer personas, because then you can unlock really rich messaging and then start to think about some predictive analytics for recommended next product for each customer, or churn risk measures are really good places to start on the predictive analytical side. When it comes to recency frequency and monetary value segmentation, this is actually not an RFM segmentation. It's really an RM, so there's no frequency in this. Now, for a lot of the brands that we work with, monetary value and frequency are very closely linked. And so you can make a very much easier segmentation just by focusing on customer lifetime value and recency. And in this example, this is an example of kind of that customer-first strategy. So an RFM segmentation helps you understand what is the optimal outcome or objective for each customer segment, that then you need to consider what messaging or what offer, or what products do I speak to these customer segments about. And so you can see you'll have a group of your customers that are high-value customers who are active. So they've placed a transaction with you maybe in the last 6 or 12 months. Now your goal with these is to reward and retain, because you want to keep them active. For your high-value customers that are becoming inactive, so maybe it's that they haven't bought from you for 6 to 24 months. It depends on the type of products that you sell. If you're selling high-end ski jackets, people might buy them every 3 years, but if you're selling T-shirts or shoes, for example, people might buy them every 6 months or every 12 months. So you need to tune your recency to what's relevant to the product categories that you sell. But for those ones that have high value that have become inactive, it's all about re-engagement. And so what are you going to do to drive re-engagement with them, drive them back to your site, engage with one of your digital properties, or bring them into store? And you've got to think about how you do that. And then for your high-value lapsed customers, it's about, it might be about reintroducing them to your brand. So, if lapsed customers are 2 or 3 years out from a last purchase, what's changed, what's different, what's new, and how do we reintroduce the brand and re-engage them that way? Now, down the bottom for your low-value customers that are active or inactive, it's all about cross-sell and upsell. So what's the next interaction that you're going to have with them to drive their next purchase to increase lifetime value? And then for your low-value lapsed customers, it might be best that you just avoid them. So you might make an active decision as a business that you'll suppress them out of your communications, and you'll preserve your budget and focus for the other segments that have higher lifetime value that you get a greater return from engaging. Now, an example of how this plays out, in this customer example, the brand was selling footwear. They currently had pixel-based audiences targeting any customers that had purchased in the last 180 days. And so those audiences, by all accounts, were performing very well. So you can see there down the bottom, they have nearly a 16 times return on ad spend. And this is a great example of a smaller brand that's not deploying tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of media, but they'd spent $1,200 on that segment and had achieved a really great $20,000 sales outcome. So the thinking here was that if these campaigns are great, should we just keep doing them? But the question that we asked is 180 days since the last purchase potentially limiting reach? And so one of the things that we did was we created an audience of customers that had purchased more than 180 days ago. And we onboarded that audience, targeted them with the same creative. One of the things we observed was, well, in fact, you were able to sustain the same return on ad spend at 15 times on a bigger audience. So actually that 180-day pixel audience, all it was doing is constraining reach. And so now we know that when they're selling footwear to their customer base, that you can look at a much broader timeline and still maintain performance of your campaigns. But the other thing that we wanted to test was, well, we were currently targeting all customers with footwear, and this brand sells multiple categories beyond footwear. And so one of the things that we wanted to know was if we improved the relevancy of the audience by including past purchases of footwear, would that improve the ad's performance? And so we created an audience of past shoe buyers, and albeit a very small audience, we were only able to spend $262 worth of media. But from that $262 of media, we drove 51 orders for a return on ad spend of 42 times. And so this is a great example of where testing some of these hypotheses of, is the pixel limiting our reach? Is bringing past purchasing data into the audience to improve relevancy going to improve performance? In this case, both answers were yes and yes. Now, this is a kind of a more advanced run strategy, and it looks at, one of the biggest problems facing direct-to-consumer brands, which is, converting one-time buyers into their second order. Now, when we look across our kind of an average across our customer bases, the one-time buyer segment, will typically range from 40 to 80% of a brand's customers. So it just shows you that getting that second order out is challenging. But when we look at this brand here, it's the same brand that we spoke to previously with the acquisition examples. When we look at the category of first purchase, and when we look at how many of those customers go on to make a second purchase, and measuring that conversion rate to second order, the results are pretty staggering. So if you look down the bottom there at fragrance, of the customers that buy fragrance first from this brand, only 25% of them go on to place a second order, which is very low. Whereas when we look at denim or jeans, you can see that of the customers that buy their jeans, 62% go on to place a second order. And so at the very first kind of start here, there are certain products that are better for you to drive customer lifetime value. And if you want to reduce your one-time buyers, focus on the product categories that have a high conversion to second order. But you can't control every product that your customers buy because they're going to come to your website, they'll browse for products, they will still buy them. So you need a strategy to grow conversion to second order. But we advocate here for starting with what your conversion rates are to drive insight. The next thing you should do is look at, for customers that buy each of those categories first, how long do they take to come back and place their second order? Because traditionally here you'll see some big ranges. So in that graphic tee segment, you can see here, of the customers that buy a graphic t-shirt, 50% of them come back and place their second order within 30 days. And so really, really fast. And same as with sweaters and knits, the customers that do make a second order come back very quickly. Whereas for other categories, like your more seasonal categories like casual jackets, you can see that only 28% of customers place their second order within the first 30 days. And actually it's a seasonal purchase, so it's much more correlated to that 180 to 2 years out to their second order. Now, understanding time to second purchase is really important because it speaks to when you trigger the next message and the intensity of when you should follow up with the customer. So in this example, for people that buy graphic t-shirts, this brand is serving them their recommended next best engagement almost the next day after buying the t-shirt. So they're really intense. Whereas with the casual jackets, it's not quite doesn't need to be as intense because the buying needs for that customer, it's more of a seasonal need. Once you then know the timing of when they place a second order, the next question to answer is, what product do they buy next? And so here we're looking at, an XY plot of first products purchased and products in the second order. And, overwhelmingly, customers come back and repeat purchase within the same category of first purchase. But here there's some, if you kind of run your eyes across a few of the columns, like sports shirts, for example, you can see that 19% of the customers that bought sports shirts came back to buy sports shirts, but 15% of them bought knits. And so if we understand the category of product that the customer comes back to buy next, it makes it very easy to personalize the message to them. And so in Facebook, for example, this could be a carousel, which check out our latest knits, sports shirts, and jeans. And so you can do category-based targeting with a carousel ad unit. Okay, so just wrapping up our kind of key takeaways. The cost of your ads in Facebook are heavily impacted by the relevancy of your messaging, and audience is a really good way, and segmentation is a really good way to level up the relevancy of your ads, which has a big impact of increasing your reach but lowering the cost to serve each ad. When it comes to finding your high-value customer audiences, start with lifetime value first and then progress into other variables, but you really should be focusing on trying to understand who are my high-value customers and what makes them high value. When you build your lookalike audiences, focus them around high-value customers, and it'll improve your yield immediately if you're not doing that. And when it comes to targeting your existing customers, prioritize personalization around audience so that you can improve the relevancy of your message and always be testing to find out what are the strategies to drive growth. Now, for anyone that's interested, you can send us a message via the app. You can reach out to Aaron, myself, or Brenna. Please don't hesitate to contact us. If this is interesting, we'd love to help you. Thank you.
I was going to get an icon pass this season, but then got really into baking. I don't miss the mountain at all. I don't. Why would I? Just got to fill that void.